Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, and of course, joining me, my partner in crime, Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
So, last week we looked at cognition because I got all excited and you indulged me, and we went into cognition. So,
Love
we wanted to,
excitement.
yeah, you wanted to continue with the variables, but apparently the first one should have been determination or digestion. So you want to backtrack and go back to that one. So can you just explain to us what that represents?
Backtracking slightly. The four transformations are determination, which people will often just kind of shorten or think of as digestion. And there's environment, perspective, and motivation. Last week we spoke about cognition as an aspect of environment. And we spoke about that a little bit. So now we want to, start at the beginning with the determination, which is all about how we feed our brain, nourish our brain system. Keep in mind, though, everything in human design everything about being in alignment starts with following your strategy and authority.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that, then you begin to let go of fear, let go of the fear generated by your mind, because now you know what is reliable and what you can rely on, which is your decision-making strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some people, being in that experiment of living as yourself, you may find that the information around the four transformation begins to really land for you and call you. This is not something to impose on yourself if you've never heard of human design and you don't know what it means to follow your strategy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something to say, oh, I have to do this, or I have to follow this in order to be well. I mean, if it feels like a chore, if it feels like something you're imposing on yourself, then your system, your design has not, in a sense, given you the green light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because we also talked about, I thought it was, I'm digressing to a conversation we had before, but when you talk about them being in order, so the digestion, the cognition, and so on, would it then be advantageous, or would we be triggered? So if you're a generator, you'd be responding to those cues that said, okay, I need to take a look at the foods and the different processes that I need for my body to process food so that my brain functions. And then once you have that online, then you would move to, okay, well, what's my cognition type? And you know what I mean? So then that's like kind of like building blocks.
Yeah, kind of like that. It really, your system will tell you if it's right for you or not.
Yeah.
I was looking at a friend of mine yesterday, and I know from living with her that she loves chai, scalding hot. Right? And I mean, that's one of the things that that is clearest and most obvious about her. But she's cold determination.
Oh, so she shouldn't be having hot.
There is no should or shouldn't. It's like, does this make sense to you? Are you feeling drawn to it? And yeah, I'm ready to embrace this and see what it does.
Right.
So it wouldn't be something for her.
Yeah. But I mean, but then she wouldn't be living how she was designed to be. But she has to wait for that cue for it to kick in to say, oh, I need to change something. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Correct. And people may never get the cue. They may never have the feeling that some human design is something they want to pursue. And Ra was very clear about that. He says, it's either not the right time or you're just not meant to have that journey. So, but I mean, it's fun to learn about these things anyway, and maybe something gets triggered for you.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
I think that it can trigger people into wanting to learn more and wanting to follow it. Does that make sense?
Perhaps, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So,
That is not something I could ever predict about anyone. I can only follow my own and see.
but yeah, we're supposed to be the example, and then people get intrigued and then they follow, right? Yeah. So let's dive in. So what can you tell
Yeah.
us about the 6 different ways of digesting?
Well, the idea here is that if you nourish your brain system with what it is nourishing to it, then you have the possibility of opening up your true sensitivity. So what we have in front of us is a possibility. Now, if we look at the 6 lines, of course, we're going to have 6, or you could say in a way 12, because each of those has its own active and passive sort of variant. But the 1 is the most primitive. The 1, 2, and 3 are the most primitive. They go back to the very beginning of our ancestry as beings. And the other thing to know here is your variable. So if you have a left variable, generally speaking, you're going to need to eat more because the left variable is active and it is focused and it requires more food. And regularity is something that is more important for the left variable. And fasting is less likely to be a good way of approaching things. Whereas if you're a right variable, which is passive, receptive, peripheral, then you need to eat much less food, and and fasting is more likely to be a useful tool for you. And overeating becomes a problem.
Yes.
So if we start with the first color is about eating only one thing at a time. So for instance, if you need salt, you just eat salt. If you want to eat bread, you just eat bread. But here we can get into, in a sense, this is where, you're really meant to eat only one thing at a time. And it's best for you to eat on a schedule. So for instance, you could have a plate of food in front of you with your favorite items, making sure not to have them touch. And then you see what your body wants to eat.
It's interesting because as we talk about stuff, like people pop into your head, right? Oh, I know somebody like that. Oh, so it's interesting how we can also use this information when we're around other people, right? So we know like kind of how to serve them food, when we're entertaining or parts of our family, we know what to feed our children, kind of thing.
Yeah. It can, and that brings up a point, Kris, which I haven't said yet, which this is not telling you what to eat. Which is what, when we usually think of diets, we think, well, do I eat paleo? Do I eat low carb? Do I eat high carb? And all these other kind of things. This is about the environment in which you eat, the way in which you eat. So number 2 is all about closed or open determination. These people are the picky eaters. They need to be very selective. These are the kind of people, with closed determination that might know what they want to eat, even though they haven't tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the persons that don't need a lot of variety in their diet. They kind of they eat the same foods all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what is often common for the closed determination is to eat seasonally, to eat intuitively, to eat local foods, for instance. Locally and seasonally often works best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of it, of the two is, um, learning what works for them and then sticking to it. So there's the closed and the open.
Mm-hmm.
And it will often shift with the seasons a bit for them. With the three, this is based on temperature now. You got the hot determination and you've got the cold determination.
Mm-hmm.
Hot people's digestive system or temperature runs cold, and so they need heat, the human body temperature or above in order to have help with the digestion.
Mm-hmm.
They need to eat consistently and routinely. The cold people, their body temperature runs hot. So they need cool to cold liquids in their diet, as well as perhaps cold showers, cold climates. Fasting is okay for the cold people. They need to eat intuitively and inconsistently.
Yeah, I noticed that you made a determination here, that threes and fours are energetic as opposed to primitive. So the 3 and 4 is not primitive, so you move into energetic. So it's
Yeah.
about the energy exchange with the temperature of the food, is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's, I think, a good way of putting it. As I say, it's like I continue to research this and learn more about it. But yes, that's a good way of putting it, I think, Kris.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, the four is all about calmness versus nervousness. It's about environment, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Calm people, it's pretty self-explanatory. They need calmness around them. If they're in a busy, loud restaurant with lots of kids, that wouldn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
It can also be very important for these people to pick and prepare their own food. Calm, they don't do well with fasting, so they're the left variable. They need consistency and routine.
Mm-hmm.
And the nervous people, who are the right variable, environment is still important to them, but in their case, they need a lot of things going on around them. It actually helps them to have lots of things going on around them. And they too, this variable often will like to grow and pick or prepare their own food. And the nervous people do well with fasting.
Mm-hmm.
The fifth variable is about sound. So you've got high and low determination. High are the people that are left variable, and so they need high volume. They, listen, have your music blaring when you eat.
Mm-hmm.
Be listening to your through your headphones.
Mm-hmm.
So that works well for them, and it's not good for these people to go for long periods without eating or fasting. They need to eat on a schedule and a routine. The low variable or the low volume are the right variable. These people need an environment where there's little or no sound,
Mm-hmm.
because too much sound will be overstimulating and interfere with their ability to take nourishment from their food. So remember,
I was just going to say, you're low, are you not?
I am low.
And what's your experience of that? Like, do you find that, you digest better in a calm environment versus a nervous environment that's noisy and loud? Or
Well, all I can say at this point is that, yeah, I can remember times when I just was really disliked being in a noisy environment when I was
Mm-hmm.
eating, like at restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't particularly notice it interfering with my digestion.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just started looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
What I have noticed is that I do like to fast.
Mm-hmm.
And that does work well for me. And so I've begun doing that more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's because it's linked to the right variable. I also know that I have a tendency to overeat. I have all of my life, and I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm becoming more curious about it and tracking it more. It's not a huge aha for me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, we skipped over you. You were cold determination. Did you
Yeah.
have, yeah.
I
Did you want to
was,
say anything
yeah,
about
when
that?
we talked about this, I was saying, oh, well, that makes sense to me because I've always liked cold drinks or
Mm,
lukewarm food to cold. I don't like my food like piping hot, so I just naturally do that. Um,
yeah.
like even last night, I was eating with a friend at a restaurant, and my food is like bubbling and boiling, and they're like, "Go ahead and eat," and I'm like, No, it's too hot for me. Like
Uh-huh.
I have to even drinks like when you drink like a tea or a coffee or something, I could never like drink it piping hot. It just
Yeah.
yeah, it's like lukewarm to cold. Like it's not cold, but it's like just like room temperature, or else I need something cold. But you
Hmm.
said something interesting about like cold showers and things like that. I'm like, no. On that side, I'm like, no, 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 no. Um,
Yeah.
so it's interesting how some of us just naturally do that because that's for
Hmm.
me. That's the way I eat. I did have a question though.
Okay.
Um, like, so if you are one type, so for example, I'll use myself as an example. So if I'm cold,
Yeah.
but um, I'm in an environment that is extremely noisy, does that affect me as well? Or is it just the temperature? Like, can one or more of these variables affect you? Because I'm thinking that when we talk about the right and the left, there's like those 16 combinations. So people can be all left, all right, or a combination. So can that
Hmm.
affect things as well? Like, could they kind of have more than one thing?
I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is just a this is a very clear and definitive kind of answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're only with each of these we're looking at one of the variables, so we're not looking at 16. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at which is your specific one, and really what we're looking at is how do you eat so that your brain gets the nourishment that it needs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when you do this is when you take in the most nourishment from whatever food that you're eating.
Right. Okay.
So if you're in the wrong environment, your system will not take in the nourishment properly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
That
make
makes
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now the final one is light,
Mm,
either direct light or indirect light. Um, so the person who has light determination in direct light um, needs to eat in direct light or when the sun is up. And
mm,
this, they need to eat consistently and routinely, and they are meant to go to bed on an empty stomach.
mm,
It is not great for these people to fast or go for long periods without eating. And these people may eat quite a bit more in the summer versus the winter.
mm,
Now, for the low light people, they need to eat in indirect light or while the sun is down or when it's cloudy. They're
mm,
not usually hungry during the day. only light liquids, during the day,
Mm-hmm.
or soup, salad, fruit. Those could be potentially okay during the day, but um, heavier meals they should eat during the night.
Yeah.
Eat a heavy. Um, you'll get tired if you eat the heavy meal during the day, but they are meant to go to bed on a full stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not great for these people to fast or go for long periods. I mean, sorry, it's okay for them to go to do the fasting or go for long
Yeah.
periods without food.
So I find all of these things so interesting. Like
Yeah,
we're such complicated machines. Like,
indeed.
when you look at each of these different variables and the different gates and the different channels and everything in human design, it's like, and we're supposed to figure ourselves out.
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
It you kind of makes you think. It's like, to me, it can be a depressing thought. It's like, well, do any of us have a chance of really living our true lives?
yeah,
Given that, given how conditioned we are. And I think that's really the point of human design. It's saying we have the opportunity to be very differentiated and very unique.
mm-hmm.
And if we eat the right diet, well, then, you know, um, when we begin to nourish ourselves in the right way, then the distortions drop away from our experience, and drop
Yeah,
away from the way we perceive things. So we start
right.
clearing away our residual conditioning as soon as we start living as ourselves, as soon as we
Mm-hmm.
start following strategy and authority, um, and nourishing our brains properly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I I can see this like triggering so many things like in people's minds, right? Yeah, so it's fascinating. Is
And
there
and
any? Oh,
and
go
what's
ahead.
interesting here, again, just to make this point clear to everyone, if you hear what I've said and you happen to know your variable, you happen to know what yours is, and you're triggered and you think, fuck no, excuse my language,
Whoops, we
then
don't
it's
have a
not for
beeper.
you. And it's not for you right now, or at least, and maybe never.
Mm,
So this is not something, again, that you're going to benefit from if you sort of artificially impose it on yourself
hmm.
in a way that feels misaligned.
Right. So, are there any that was your last words, or did you have a few last words before we wrap up?
And those are my last words.
So I would really encourage anyone because this is such a system that is so intriguing and you can go in depth with it that you may, even if you have your chart, want to book like a consultation here with Hartwell at Clair-i-tea so that you can dive into some of these different facets, especially if it is piquing your curiosity and you're really diving into human design and you want to use it to live a more conscious life. Um, Hartwell also has a program for those people just starting in human design, which just is the basics. So if you're interested in doing that, you can reach out to us here at Clair-i-tea as well. Do you have anything else on the horizon, Hartwell, that you want to talk to people about?
I've been teasing you guys about it for a while, but in the fall, we are going to start a discussion group. Not sure
Mm-hmm.
how frequently it will be, but for those who have been initiated, for
Mm-hmm.
those in the know who have some human design knowledge, it'll be a chance to chat with other people, share your insights, learn more.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be specifically teaching, it'll be more a Q&A, more of a share experience and support for all of us to be in the experiment of living as ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that will be I think that'll be very key to a lot of people because it'll help us get excited about devoting ourselves to the experiment of living as ourselves.
Well,
And if you're called to that, then answer that. Listen to your
mhm.
strategy and authority, and if it moves you, come along.
Right on. That sounds awesome. So I'll just let you guys know I started something new. I'm doing at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, introducing angels and allies and people that work with us who are trusted practitioners. So if you are interested in knowing about neuroacoustics at 10 o'clock, we'll be talking to Justin Victor. So you can tune again then now, or at 10, you can tune in. So with that, we'll say goodbye. God bless. And we hope to see you soon next Wednesday when we look at the next one. In order was cognition. So we're going to skip it and go to the next
Environment.
environment. Okay. All right, everyone. Take care.